Today, we welcome producer Carlos Ibarra to discuss his latest documentary, The Cleaning Lady, that tells the story of Marisol Rhina, a mother of three who, over a decade ago, crossed the border to provide a better life for her family and is now returning home in the hopes of reconnecting with the family she once had to leave behind. Let's take a look.
Yo creo que como todos soñamos algún día ser profesionistas y a mí la profesión que más me llamaba la atención era ser doctora. O sea, yo tenía esa ilusión de ser doctora.
¿Cómo estuvo tu semana?
Bien, un poco ajetreado, pero bien.
¿Sí?
Sí,
¿Y qué tal?
ahorita ya empieza a haber trabajo porque ya, ya va fuera el COVID. Mi nombre es Marisol y soy de la Ciudad de México. De la Ciudad de México, de la delegación Iztapalapa. Yo comentando con mis hijas, les dije que por qué no nos veníamos, aquí había trabajo. Creo que me voy yo primero y después vengo o sea, los voy trayendo, porque me lo decían muy fácil. Me decían, no, pues te van a tramitar una visa, y vas a pasar por la línea. Yo no sabía qué era eso. Mi hijo, el más chiquito, tenía 8 años. La niña tenía 18 y 19 años. Tengo que regresar porque mi familia es muy importante para mí. Ya es tiempo de que esté con ellos.
And joining us now to share more is the Cleaning Lady producer, Carlos Ibarra. Hello and welcome, Carlos.
Hi, Rhina. Thank you for having me on Open. Very excited to talk a little bit about the project that we're currently working on with is The Cleaning Lady, which just had its premiere this past Monday at the Doc NYC.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And congratulations on the storytelling. I want to say it's so relevant right now, right? And I say relevant from the perspective of people having a better understanding of why people actually make the choice to come over here to provide some kind of life for their families over there. In this particular story, though, I want to say the shooting style was very interesting because nobody's identity was revealed, but yet it was still captivating. And it's really about the story and where we're at and the climate we're in right now.
Yeah, our director, Erica de Alexander, really wanted to keep our main characters, Marisol Reina's story and her identity private. And so because of that, she really wanted to figure out a nice creative way to work with her. And we thought, what are ways that we can touch into the humanity of this person without blocking their face, but getting people to be able to see a glimpse of who she is and letting her tell her story and getting to see the work that she's been doing here in the US as a cleaning lady. And then sharing with that as her life has evolved and learning the sacrifices that she's doing, not only as a worker that is hiding behind the shadows, but as an individual who has also left a family that has grown without her, and her feeling that need of family where success for her doesn't seem to mean anything without her family.
And I'm sorry, your director's name again is?
Erica de Alexander.
Erica? Okay, so how did Erica choose or find this particular person?
So Erika happened to be her cleaning lady, and as she was working with her and getting to spend more time with her, she really opened
Erica
her.
was her cleaning lady?
Marisol
It
was her cleaning lady. Yeah.
Got it.
So yeah, Marisol was her cleaning lady, and so she through years of working together, they really started to bond and have a connection. And slowly, Marisol started to reveal some of the stories and like her own immigration story, as well as like the difficulties that she was having with staying here in the U.S. while her family was away in Mexico. And Erica asked her if she would be okay with her following her with cameras and finding a way to be able to tell this story. And Marisol at the beginning was a little hesitant because and resistant because of all the all of like the repercussions that it could have.
Right.
And especially, her family also felt like, how do you want to share that story when we haven't had a chance to navigate our own personal stories?
Right. And if it's okay, I think we should share with our viewers how she basically had to make the choice of leaving an 8-year-old behind. That's one of 3 children.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yes.
That's hard.
Yeah. And she talks a lot about how essentially like her family in Mexico, which she was helping support, really raised those children. And even through the film, you get to find out that even her children don't look at her as a mother, but rather like the grandmother, right? Or the tias or the tios that help raise them as their closest family and even like their parental figures. And so for her, she feels like an outsider, even though she's been heavily involved and helped to provide a incredible middle class kind of life for them that has allowed them to prosper over in Mexico, but here she still feels like a second class citizen.
Right. And that's the true like interesting factor in the storytelling, how she was willing to sacrifice, I want to say even her esteem, right? To serve in whatever capacity she needed to generate revenue to then send it back to her family so they could live very comfortably.
Correct. I mean, Marisol is a very, very sweet human being, right? With so much passion, so many dreams, right? Like the story also extends on her own personal dreams, especially with her wanting to be a doctor since a young child, right? And from the beginning, you get to see that she's like, I'm a survivor, right? I will figure out how to do whatever I need to do to be able to make my dreams come true. And for her, that's why she felt that coming to the U.S. was the best decision. And even though her dreams weren't being actualized, but she was helping to create the dreams of her children, that was something that I think at some point clicked, where she can't forget about herself and the things that she wants, which then bring in the question of what do I do, right? Do I continue to stay here in the U.S. In a mental health state like of depression, right? Isolation, or do I decide to go back to Mexico and reconnect with my family? And if so, what does that mean? And what is that process of reconnecting with your family?
Right. And that is such a difficult place to be in, right? As a mother, I can get, I have an idea of what must have been going through her head. Obviously, I'm here in America, which is different, right? In the sense of being born American, or what have you. But to sacrifice leaving a certain lifestyle to then just put yourself in a position of living in this world of sacrifice, knowing that you have the ability to live in a different class, right? And tax bracket for that matter, but needing to do what she needed in order to even provide that at the expense of not being there or able to like hug your children. Like it's a simple act of just hugs for what, 15 years, like?
15 years, wow. Exactly. So she lived in the States for 15 years before deciding to go back. And she talks a lot about how, trying to reach out to her family, especially her kids, and her kids like not understanding, especially the younger ones, right? The one that she left when he was 8, she had a little bit of a sensibility and understanding and was able to be talked through, but the younger ones don't have a connection with her other than through phone calls or Zoom meetings, kind of things like that. And she talks about how that's tough, that's difficult. You don't really feel that bond. And that's what she wanted and really, really was fighting for, and felt that that was the one element that was missed in her life.
So just out of curiosity, I mean, you probably don't know the answer to this, but do you think having this documentary put together assisted her in making the decision that she made?
I think that Erica would mention that, yes, there was a lot of processing, a lot of conversations that they had. I mean, in itself, right, there were questions that Erica would ask her, and it would be like, right now it's not the time, or, you know what, I need to process that and speak with my family before I talk about it. And so I do think that it started to open up a can of worms and giving her an opportunity to be able to share a little bit of things that she had bottled up. I mean, I think that that is one of the biggest things that undocumented immigrants have here in the United States, right? That inability to be able to openly share or talk about their situation and what's going on for fear that repercussions might come from it is something that I think stood with her for so long.
And so while we're here discussing it in English, I want our viewers to know that it is in Spanish with subtitles in English. And I say that, you know, with the hopes that anybody who may need to hear this story or see this story can find their way to it, because I found it to be extremely enlightening.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so how do you think, or how do you feel this will resonate with the current state that we're in right now, not knowing what's going to happen in January? Or what do you hope it could serve as?
So I know that Erica's hope, and also when I came on board as a producer with my company, Future Self Media, what we really wanted to do is give access to people to be able to experience the humanity of immigrants, right? I think it's so easy to be able to put a label or on a process of a system that they couldn't follow. But the reality is that there's so many circumstances, there's many situations that they couldn't avoid and caused them to leave their country, right? And I think that getting that perspective, that people don't make choices to leave their country. You know, we even say this in the film. It happens that people are forced to leave the comfort, leave the area that they consider home and that fulfills them, as a way to survive, but also as a way to be able to succeed in life. And I feel that this film does that. It gives people an opportunity to look a little bit more at the humanity of people, which I think is one of the things that we're starting to miss in our world, right? We just look at people for what is like in front of them without realizing that there's more in an individual.
Yeah, you know, I'm really taking in what you're saying deeply, because I feel that a lot of the films that share these stories, it always has like some kind of misfortune as an ending, right?
Yeah.
And in your documentary, you do share with the viewer what that process is like to even make that decision, because I know you also shared briefly about how her husband actually had to go. She came by plane, he didn't, right?
That's correct, yes.
And so what he had to endure to get here, you know, it makes you question, like, wow, you know, things have to really be in a bad place for somebody to sacrifice their life for the sake of trying something new, right? With the hopes of possibility presenting itself and not knowing, right?
Correct. And I think also her sharing that part of the story shows like the different processes that exist, right? She did it the legal way, right? And then there was like the illegal way that her husband tried to do in terms of attempting into the country, but that's because he wasn't given the same opportunities in terms of qualifying to be able to do it through a legal pathway. And I think that the film does that really well. And I think that also one of the biggest things that we have with the film too is that it is a story about an immigrant that's also being told by an immigrant, because our director is also from Mexico and has that experience of being an immigrant and understanding like what it feels to be an outsider. You know, I myself am an immigrant, also born in Mexico, raised in California, but I understand that sensitivity and am very highly aware too about the work that, you know, immigrants have in the U.S. and what it takes to be able to succeed.
Right, and then there's the dynamics of the intergenerational mentality, right? Because it's different to be raised here, even if you are an immigrant, versus coming as an elder and then trying to just make do with whatever's presented to succeed.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I think that when immigrants come as young children, it's very easy for them to assimilate. Like, that's myself included, you know. I came in at a very young age and quickly assimilated. You know, I think that at times it's that conundrum that you have where you're like, am I American? Am I Latino? You know, it's like, am I Mexican? One of those things where you're trying to find like the middle ground, and that it's perfectly okay to be both. But I think with like older, you know, elder immigrants who come, they themselves are so attached to the world that they had before and their upbringing that they have, that it's not the easiest, right? Some do transition and like adapt, but it's still that longing, that feeling of the world that they left behind.
Right. And so, in conclusion to this conversation and what I observed, if you don't mind me sharing, is that what it really boils down to is quality of life. And that is the message that your film brings. It's like, what quality of life do you want to live? Right? And that really differs based on a person's priorities. And what you shared in your film, in your storytelling, is that her priorities shifted. They pivoted later, and material possessions no longer became that important.
Correct. Yeah. I think that that is a big transition that you get to see. And also, I think that that is, you know, as humans, we're constantly evolving, we're constantly changing. And as you mentioned, that it's always about going back and reassessing what are your priorities or what is the importance that you need in order to be happy, right? And to be able to feel like you can continue to thrive in this world. And that's exactly what Marisol did.
Well, congratulations to both you and Erica on birthing this film and bringing it into this world at a time that we need stories like this, now more than ever. And thank you for bringing it here to our viewers to share. Once again, everyone, Carlos Ibarra, we were speaking about the documentary, The Cleaning Lady. It's a short, and it can currently be viewed online through December 2nd as part of the Doc NYC Film Festival. And also, if you're interested, for more information, you can visit docnyc.net. All right, stay tuned. There's more open when we return.